Thank you everybody for being on time and coming. Today we're going to talk about a new assessment plan that APTS is rolling out this year. It's going to focus on evaluation. And we're going to start with an overview of the different types of assessments that are available and out there. The first one is the screening and identification, and that's typically done before the students even get to us. You notice that they're getting behind on their work in class, they're struggling a little bit here and there, so you do some initial screenings. The second type of assessment is the eligibility and diagnosis. That is also typically done before the students get to us, but Ms. Karen, Ms. Blair, in your classroom, the younger students, some of them haven't gone through all the eligibilities that they may have in their special education journey, so there still might be some more diagnoses to be completed. So there's assessments specifically for that. The next is the IEP development and placement. So when you're working on the IEP goals, you're really looking at the assessments to figure out what should we be working on, and as well as the placement and what type of classroom, school setting will best meet the students' needs. And for instructional planning, we're always doing different types of assessment to figure out what lessons we're going to teach and why. And then evaluation. So we really want to evaluate student progress, and that's what we're going to focus on today, and that's what the purpose of the new assessment plan we're going to roll out for the 2016-2017 school year is for. So let's do a little activity to start our brains thinking, a little think, pair, share. What are some ways that we already are evaluating our students on a daily basis, quarterly, whatever? Think about it, talk about it with the person on your side of the table, and then we'll share them a little too.
I usually just either write down a grade, which I write down stone.
Yeah.
You know, before I talked about like the goals, those boxes, right? I write it on there.
You know what? I guess.
All of my guys don't work.
It's just
do as well.
Yeah. Just real program worksheets and many grade levels up from there, but
I think accelerated
that all
reading
helps me to be able to see the progress of the earlier attempts at something,
worksheet
something
that we
in the
do
same
is
worksheet.
whether it's like
Until we get to mastery and
Yeah.
verbal, very good.
go on there.
That's one
That's
thing I'll
what
forget.
yeah. I like that picture.
I think
I got it from
Yeah, I still see it.
I think that I need to
Yeah, of course, when you're doing group, you're doing all that.
forming
So much more stuff in formal, just walking, hands raising, what you're saying,
I think that formal assessment is
interaction.
yeah.
Do you guys have a good list?
Yeah.
Yeah, the kids that are better.
Okay. This group, would you like to start first with some different assessments?
Sure. We talked about the different analytical assessments. We use reading A to Z, star reading, and star math. We also do run-in records, verbal assessments as well too, and worksheets, definitely, and informal assessments.
Yeah, great. Okay, anything to add to their list?
It's basically all of those things.
Yeah.
And the proficiency rating sheets are what I use
That's what you
most.
call it.
That's what it's
I
called.
forgot what
think
they're
it is.
called, yeah.
In my room, that's what I use to assess almost everything.
Yeah.
And anecdotal, but.
Yeah. Well, I've been when I keep student worksheets is to go back on and compare
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, so we've got some formal, informal, mainly informal, especially with our population assessments that we do. It's very individualized. And I'm glad you mentioned proficiency ratings. That's what we're going to take a look at next. So if you want to pass this sheet out, this is our student data. I did a little number crunching. of the progress that our students have shown since their first quarter of their progress report and their last quarter of their progress report, just in the areas of math and reading, as well as whatever assessment data that I could get from the state assessments. There was a lot missing from our student records, and I didn't print out all the data behind it, but this just is a summary of it. So some of the students didn't have VAP scores or SOL scores that carried over from previous school years, and then our younger students haven't had assessments yet, so of course they didn't have that on there. But most of the students did show excellent average scores. You'll see there's some variance in there. And then I also wanted to take a look at what was the percentage of increase that they had made from their first quarter to their last quarter after working on their reading goals and math goals for, some of them were a full 4 quarters, some of them hadn't had 4 quarters yet of their new goals, so it may have been just 3 periods. But when I graphed the, progress or lack thereof progress, if they dip down, this is what we look like, and we're looking pretty good. Whoever this mysterious student is here, I didn't want to put names on there. We'll have to focus on and kind of figure out. But it's always good to take a look at what the data is showing us about our student progress. I know that we do look at their progress reports a lot, a very individual at each graph, but to kind of get an overall picture and see how they're doing over time, it gives us a larger picture of how they're really doing too. And we want to make sure they're in here on the green part of where we want to be and making those increases instead of regressing. And if they are regressing, we are a school that focuses on behavior. Are we really doing everything we can behaviorally? Our one darling student doesn't even have any data yet this year, so she's got blanks on hers. So we want to really make sure that if they're not making that academic progress, and we've discussed everything that we could to help show their academic progress, are we doing everything we can behaviorally too, to make sure they're available? And this kind of just leads us into our new procedure, which we're going to be using an assessment record sheet. So if you want to go ahead and pass around the hard copies. So what we're going to start doing, and what a lot of programs already do, is we're going to have a pre-assessment and a post-assessment, at least 2. Starting at the end of September will be the pre-assessment, the first initial one. And then the post-assessment, I believe, was end of April. So we could see how they progress throughout those core school months. And we're going to have lots of training on this in the future, and we're going to have lots of discussions about assessments and how to choose them and the different types that we're going to use in the future. But we just wanted to kind of get this introduced because September's not too far away, and you're with a lot of your students now, so maybe you can make some of the choices already. So if you take a look at the top of the sheet is the pre-assessment period. There's spaces for 3, but we're only requiring at least 2 assessments. And we'd like them in a couple different areas. So if you're doing a reading assessment, we'd like you to do a math assessment as well. Maybe transition assessments or hygiene or personal life skills assessments for some of the students instead of a reading or math assessment. And then after you get the results from your pre-assessment, we want you to target skills based on what the student still needs to work on too. And then underneath the pre-assessment, the second grouping of boxes down, are some strategies that we're proposing to hopefully set a target date for the students to achieve it by. So we know that we're on track to that showing improvement on the end of the year assessment. So we would do the assessment again at the end of the year in hopes that they're going to show an increase in their progress. Any questions on the form itself?
I don't know if it's the form itself.
Okay.
So are these separate than like IEP goals?
Yes.
Okay.
But, and we will talk about that, I think the IEP goals will probably relate to the types of assessments that we're going to be using,
Okay.
and they may be tied in.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. So some of the assessments that we have available, and Miss Erin is going to put together a whole new assessment binder. We had one from last year too, but she's revamping everything as well. Are the basic reading inventory, which I have here and will let you guys kind of peruse later. It's word lists from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, as well as read alouds and then retelling the story. So that's the basic reading inventory. We also have the Brigance. I know some of you may have had the opportunity to do that this year. There's a few different Brigances that we do have. The inventory of early development, which is this one. Transitional skills, which I don't have on hand. And then the comprehensive inventory of basic skills too. So Miss Erin will help get this rolling for you guys too if this is the assessment that you would like to select as an appropriate one. Renaissance Learning, the STAR assessments, which you guys mentioned. So that tests on math, early literacy, or reading skills, and it's all in an online format. We also have lots of checklists and rubrics for different skills, such as social skills, hygiene, alternative skills, personal self-care. I left off the E. Some personal self-care as well, which I know that some of you have used. We have a lot of checklists in this transitional information planning booklet, as well as in our assessment binder too. And then the MSAP is our vocational program assessment. It's matching, sorting, assembly, and packaging. So that has lesson plans as well as the assessment piece, so you could use it for both. And then the A to Z informal assessments. So online there's a lot of different reading assessments on A to Z, just identifying letters, vowel sounds, lots of different reading assessments on that website as well.
We have that renewed, do we, the reading A to Z?
We do.
Okay.
We do. And I think they got writing A to Z as well this year too. That's exciting. Science. I've requested writing, that's what it is. So it's science A to Z, requested writing.
That sounds cool.
So some things to keep in mind when you're selecting the assessment is, of course, the student's age. Some of our older students will probably be geared more towards the transitional and functional life skills assessments as opposed to figuring out what they know on the Brigance level, depending on their functioning too. There's state assessment track, so if they're an SOL student, we might be choosing a different assessment than if they're a VAP student, because that kind of shows their level as well. Their IEP goals, and including the transition goals for students 14 years old and up. So we have one student in Miss Jessica's class that their personal care goals and their life skill goals are very important to them and the family, and the IEP team has agreed. So that might be a focus in one of the assessments to show improvement on those. And it probably will tie into his IEP goals as well. And then, are there any others that you all have experience with on how to select an appropriate assessment for students? Anything else you keep in mind?
I always think about if they're going to answer like expressively or I just lost the other word. You know what I mean? They're going to select it or receptively. Thank you.
Yeah.
Especially in my room, that's something I always.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because working with students that are not as verbal or nonverbal, you have to think about how are they going to let you know this information. Mr. Johns made some informal assessments on his own that use all the pictures and pointing, and that's definitely something that could be used for this too as a pre and post assessment. Okay. So we're gonna group up again just with your side of the table, and this time we'll take a little bit more time. I want you to actually select an assessment for a student, just one student between the two of you that you decide to select one for. And then state why you've selected that particular assessment, and then talk about some targets you may discover because of that assessment. So we're hoping to find out some information from the assessment to then go ahead and target for the rest of the school year to go. So I will pass these out. You guys want to actually look through any of them.
I think it's a lot,
I remember using it.
I like this a lot. I didn't feel different. This is perfect for one of my kids. Very good reading level. They took the stars reading, but then it's spelled facials. JS.
Yeah, it's kind of think of you.
Yes.
So that when it comes down to spelling the simplistic words like this, he will not be able to spell it. Yeah. So I think something like this would be great.
We have like lists by grade.
Columns.
That's nice. This is actually really good for any of my students.
Oh, okay.
Look at
And
that.
then
Look at that.
yeah.
This is a good idea.
Oh, so you just
Looks like one.
Gotcha. Like you check
What
what
do you, it's kind of useful.
So it's just, teacher to go through.
This is great.
Take action on it.
This is probably below his level, storytelling.
Yeah. Keeps going.
So he would be like,
Yeah.
what's his grade?
JS?
Yeah.
He is third grade.
So he's
fourth grade.
Does that look appropriate? Or does this look more
Probably
appropriate?
even just pick sections.
Okay.
Fourth grade.
Like,
Either or, the reading is fine.
Yeah,
But
and I'd probably just
But
do
even
both,
if
so I
sections-
just see what's up.
Right. But then when it comes to.
Oh, okay.
if they know what to do, that's what they know.
Mm-hmm.
It probably has or like match our grade level. And the retelling has to do with the retelling.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be interesting too, because he could be like fourth grade or third grade in retelling and then vice versa. And like decoding,
Yeah.
because that's usually how it goes. Awesome. So we're
So we're
gonna
gonna use
JS and we're gonna use this.
So,
Basically reading and hearing.
I'm sorry.
And then in it are the sight
Do you
words.
have a student maybe?
Words. What are the
Sure.
words? The
How
primary.
about,
Yeah, like,
gosh,
Yeah.
it's
I guess they're all.
they're by grade level, right?
Yeah.
somebody on my mind a lot,
Yeah.
yeah.
So then we would do third and fourth, did you say?
So we have.
And then in advertising.
Oh,
I guess then it goes back through, I guess once you've gone through.
Why? Because of the style
Oh, okay, so if he,
challenges.
so I guess it's like if he doesn't do this, then you just doesn't have it.
And the whys here. And the grade levels goes into
What does it say? Further assessments
the
needed.
strengths and
Oh.
weaknesses.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So this would be like, I guess, the first step.
Right?
Mhm.
No, that sounds, so this would probably be a good place to start, probably get pre-assessment. Because it'd label out what you need to do, and then I think you need to do this.
Excellent thing as far as seeing where it's at.
Sometimes that's might be good for me, because like, because he doesn't have to, like, he's not filling this out, you're filling this out, based on what you see.
Right, right. Yeah, well, you know, this is hoping that you've done all this broad range of stuff, so you
There's
have
some
a
targets
feel for
that
the
are
kid.
really
Say that the
But like,
kid
you know
does.
him well.
Yeah.
So on the form, it's
That's a
the
real.
target skills,
Yeah.
some weaknesses that you may discover that you want to target him to acquire before he would retake the
I guess.
adjustment.
No,
So from what you're telling me, I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
because he's using different behavior things to,
you
it's
know,
hard to know what
correlate
he's
like
gonna.
the sound with the letters, the symbols with the
Yeah.
sounds. Forget what that's called.
Cause he can certainly do this, as far as the file.
But
That's kind of.
it's because it sounds like you know what the word is, but
Mhm.
can't spell it himself.
Right,
So,
too much
This is like
thinking.
actual.
Right,
like, you know, when you're
that's
like
been one of his
reading or writing,
is to be able to do like a 3-4 step thing, do errands, that kind of thing, speech or with me,
Those are gonna be
set
these
direction from
sounds.
different
So
staff.
that's why you say it, but then you can't do it actually. You can't recreate it when it comes time to actually do it.
Maybe you can use
Yeah, that's perfect. Something else too. Some sort of processing thing going on. Definitely.
It may be, yeah, because it's the output more so than.
Yeah, this works pretty well for him because it shows the cooperation that he can come through.
I wonder if it's a
check
type
off
of just like,
boxes.
Yes,
Yeah.
or something.
Whereas if you go up to this kind of thing, this is getting to the process for quitting a job.
Because his reading
once
is
he
really
knows
high.
this,
Yeah.
Or is he rushing?
A kid like that can do it, like 3 or 4 kids in my class can do that. They can have highlighted application sections and they can fill out name and address. If they're over 18, yes or no. Not the whole, certainly not a resume yet.
Yeah,
just
right.
that,
Like getting right, even when it comes down to just
Maybe something like CI and K, that's they can look up job searches online.
proper punctuations, it doesn't matter, he'll still spell it however his keywords in his head.
That's like
Without
favorite.
Yeah.
We just say, just, it's word for word, or we'll print it up, put it at his desk, and it's
If they were looking things or
Yeah.
if it was the things that they didn't get.
Right,
And yes,
right,
a little bit of Russian as well, too.
right.
Some days.
And don't forget today at 2 o'clock, you're gonna interview Mr. Mark. They can do a
If
bunch
you're
of
tough
these.
on him and you say,
Yeah.
Everyone come in and ask me survey
Everything.
questions.
Exactly, we've done that plenty of
It's the
times.
same here.
Yeah, whereas OR doesn't have an issue with it.
So it's like
He
expectations,
understood
it's kind of
his,
being able to,
articulation,
yeah.
but being able to answer real short, rote answers, he can do,
You hate
with,
doing that.
with
but
prep and
sometimes
prompting.
You have to be really
It's necessary.
stern with him to let him know that this is what you need to get
Yeah,
done.
personal data sheets,
This is
assistant
what you
job
rather
application.
than asking him.
Yeah, he had a previous set of people, it was like, what's your father's name? I guess, if you get lost or something.
Did you get a new planner?
But they just give you.
Yes, I missed this page for my birthday.
Oh, I got
So
you.
finally bring it out.
Mhm.
Got my July in here.
So you can see these in this book, like certain sections that are.
Yeah, like some of these.
I know, it's too much.
So I have a
So much
calendar at home.
What they actually have to
I
do.
look and I put stuff, my mom is always erasing.
And we're looking at, it's just us as the point of view on that.
It's too hard to keep track of everything, it's
Not a joint thing with 2 or 3 people,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
students.
it's hard to find the best system.
Mhm.
Yeah, I find that if I write it down right away, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Anything else, Jessica?
That's what I think my mom
This
back
is
had
like
a camera,
straight
me and I
transition
resisted for
from
the
there
longest
to
time.
Now you realize why.
Yeah, it's like,
Although,
right
again,
away.
a lot of the guys, it's hard to know how they're answering that, if they're answering how you want them to. or-
do it later.
Some of these might disagree with it.
Yeah, yeah. They don't want to disappoint anybody, but check it all out.
all right.
All right, you guys set? Sure? Okay. Mr. John, Miss Jessica, you want to go first this time?
Yeah, we just kind of looked through this, since we're talking,
Yeah.
something near and dear with transition, something I certainly deal with the older students, and so Jessica and I were looking at this area, and kind of seeing this as a good tool for getting a baseline kind of thing, to kind of see where a kid is at, if it's applicable, if it's proficient, if they have it, or if it's an action where it's an area of need where they need
Okay.
to work on. We looked at various sections, because I guess you have the option of doing that, right?
Well, we kind of looked by section. Some of them were a little more abstract, like identifying jobs that family members performed,
Okay.
versus other sections were skills that the students are able to do,
Sure.
which kind of for at least my room and some of the kids in John's room,
Mhm.
it's, you can learn a lot more about what the student needs based on what they're doing
Yes.
versus questions about parents or something. And then this kind of lines, the sections kind of line it up nicely, like, oh, yes, 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 oh, they can't quite do that yet, and then you have a clear example of what you can make into a goal for the year to
Perfect.
assess at the end. So.
Perfect. Great example. Thank you. All right, and then just Mandy, Miss Blair, and Miss Kara.
So we were discussing one of his scary students, JS, who's a third grader going to fourth grade, rising third grader, who has, it sounds like difficulty decoding when he's spelling, when he's creating written output.
Okay.
And so she chose.
I chose the reading, basic reading inventory, and then we were looking through it and we saw some of the, like the pre-primitive words that he can actually, some of them I believe he possibly can identify or spell out. And then once we work through that particular section, because he does have that challenge with the actual output of the spelling, and not so much with the reading, that we would go through and let him do those particular tests or lists. As well.
And the target that I think what we're trying to do is actually verify our hypothesis, which is that he has some difficulty with like written output. But what exactly is it? Like,
Yeah.
is it kind of a phonemic awareness?
If you target it, can you make progress, or is it still struggling?
What's the exact target in this area that's problematic?
Great. Okay, thanks for sharing, guys. So that's the end of the formal presentation, but this is going to be an ongoing discussion. Ms. Aaron will come out and talk a little bit more. So be thinking about the assessments that you'll want to do in September. I know that we've tried to roll this out before without providing as many resources, and we all learn about assessments in our college experiences, but when it comes to our classrooms, they're just so unique that sometimes you can't think of which one you should pick for a student. So keep it in mind, think about it, and we'll have ongoing trainings and discussions and be able to help each other out throughout the process of while we're rolling out this new assessment procedure. Do you guys have any questions for me, or anything you'd like to add?
For like an IEP due in the next week or so, do you want to have us using any of these?
If you want to use any of them for information on your IEP, I know that that particular young man, we've got a lot of good information on him before.
Right.
If you want to do some of your usual ones that you've done to see if he's changed his mind on his career choice.
Right.
It's always good to get a yearly update. And that book's a great resource, but you don't have to for the IEP.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I do have a question. When we are filling these the record sheets out, when we change over within the new from the OIEP to the new IEP, do we recreate brand new pre-assessments?
So
Or
this
is
is
or this is
good
just
question.
year.
This is for this school year.
School year.
So it's not going to change with the IEP because we have IEPs all throughout the school year. So this is going to stay by school year. So the same two pre-assessments you'll do those for the post-assessment, and then next year you'll decide, does he need to keep working? Does he or she need to keep working on these assessments and skills, or should I select something else? So it'll be by school year.
Cool.
Hmm.
That's a good point.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.